You were born into a story already in motion. Before you spoke your first word, before you took your first breath, the world had already written chapters for you. Your family, your culture, your environment, they handed you a script. Some parts were beautiful. Others were broken. And without knowing it, you began to carry the weight of generations. Jordan Peterson often says, "We live inside stories we didn't write." That's not just poetic, it's painfully true. You inherited more than just your name. You inherited patterns, fears, expectations. Some were spoken aloud. Others were silent, buried in glances, in habits, in the spaces between words. And as you grew, you didn't just learn how to walk or talk. You learned how to survive in a world that was already wounded. You learned what to hide, what to suppress, what to pretend. And in doing so, you began to lose pieces of yourself. But here's the truth. The weight you carry isn't yours alone. It's ancestral. It's cultural. It's psychological. And until you name it, it owns you. This chapter is about naming that weight. Not to blame, but to understand. Because understanding is the first step toward liberation. You see, trauma doesn't just live in memories. It lives in behaviors, in reactions, in the way you flinch when someone raises their voice, in the way you shut down when someone gets too close, in the way you sabotage joy because you don't believe you deserve it. These aren't flaws, they're echoes. Echoes of moments you didn't choose. Echoes of pain you didn't cause. Echoes of stories you didn't write. But now you have a choice. You can keep carrying the weight, or you can start unpacking it. Peterson's work is grounded in the idea that meaning comes from responsibility. But how do you take responsibility for something you didn't create? You start by seeing it, by tracing the patterns, by asking hard questions. What did love look like in your childhood? Was it safe? Was it conditional? Was it absent? What did conflict look like? Was it explosive? Was it silent? Was it manipulative? These questions aren't easy. They stir up memories. They challenge loyalties. They threaten identities. But they're necessary. Because healing isn't comfortable, it's courageous. And courage begins with truth. The truth is, most people are living out scripts handed to them by wounded ancestors. Your father's anger wasn't just his, it was his father's. Your mother's anxiety wasn't just hers, it was her mother's. And so on. The chain continues. Until someone breaks it. Until someone says, "This ends with me." That someone is you. Not because you're perfect. Not because you're ready. But because you're awake. And awakening is the beginning of transformation. Peterson often speaks about the archetype of the hero, the one who ventures into the unknown, confronts the dragon, and returns transformed. But the dragon isn't always external. Sometimes the dragon is your past, your shame, your silence. And confronting it means facing the parts of yourself you've buried, the parts you've judged, the parts you've feared. This is not easy. It requires emotional stamina, psychological resilience, spiritual depth. But it's worth it. Because on the other side of that confrontation is freedom. Freedom from inherited guilt. Freedom from unconscious patterns. Freedom from the weight that was never truly yours. But here's the paradox. To be free, you must first take ownership. Not of the pain, but of the healing. You must say, "I didn't choose this story, but I choose how it ends." That's power. That's agency. That's the beginning of rewriting your life. And rewriting doesn't mean erasing. It means integrating. It means honoring the truth without being defined by it. It means saying, "Yes, this happened. Yes, it hurt. Yes, it shaped me. But it doesn't own me." That's the voice of the healed self. The self that sees clearly, feels deeply, acts wisely. So today, begin the process. Sit with your story. Trace the patterns. Name the weight. and then slowly, gently start to release it. Not all at once. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Because every step you take toward healing is a step away from the chains of your past. And every step away from those chains is a step toward the life you were meant to live. Responsibility. It's a word that sounds heavy, almost burdensome. But Jordan Peterson insists it's the very thing that gives life meaning. Not comfort. Not happiness. Not freedom. Meaning. And meaning is what we crave when everything else falls apart. When relationships fail. When dreams collapse. When silence replaces connection. In those moments, we don't need escape, we need purpose. And purpose begins with responsibility. But here's the paradox. Most people run from responsibility because they think it will trap them. They think it will limit their freedom, their joy, their spontaneity. What they don't realize is that the absence of responsibility is the real prison. Because without responsibility, you drift. You react. You become a victim of circumstance. And victims don't heal, they wait. They wait for someone to save them. Someone to apologize. Someone to change. But healing doesn't come from waiting. It comes from choosing. Choosing to pick up the burden. Choosing to carry the weight. Choosing to say, "This is mine now." Peterson's message is brutal in its simplicity. Pick up your damn burden and carry it. Not because it's fair. Not because it's easy. But because it's necessary. Necessary for growth. Necessary for transformation. Necessary for redemption. Redemption is not a gift, it's a process. A process that begins when you stop blaming and start building. Building yourself. Building your values. Building your life. And that building requires responsibility. Responsibility for your thoughts. Your actions. Your reactions. Your healing. Especially your healing. Because no one else can do it for you. They can support you. They can inspire you. But they can't walk the path. That's yours. And the path is steep. It's filled with shadows, doubts, temptations. But it's also filled with light. With clarity. With strength. And every step you take, every burden you lift, every truth you face, you become more of who you were meant to be. Responsibility is not about perfection. It's about participation. It's about showing up for your own life. Even when it's messy. Even when it's painful. Even when you feel like quitting. Especially then. Because those moments, the ones where you want to run, are the moments that define you. They're the crucible. The invitation. And if you accept that invitation, you begin to change. Not overnight. Not dramatically. But slowly. Subtly. Deeply. You start to speak differently. Think differently. Move differently. You start to become someone who doesn't just survive, but leads. Leads yourself. Leads others. Leads with integrity. And that leadership begins with responsibility. Peterson often says, if you want to find meaning, take on the heaviest burden you can carry. That sounds insane. Why would anyone choose the heaviest burden? Because the weight shapes you. It carves out your character. It reveals your strength. It forces you to grow. And growth is the only way out of suffering. Not avoidance. Not distraction. Growth. But growth requires effort, discipline, sacrifice. And those are words most people avoid. Because we live in a culture obsessed with ease. With shortcuts. With comfort. But comfort doesn't build character. It builds complacency. And complacency is the enemy of meaning. So if you want meaning, real, lasting, soul-deep meaning, you must embrace responsibility. That means owning your story, owning your wounds, owning your choices, even the ones you regret, especially the ones you regret. Because regret is a teacher. It shows you where you betrayed yourself, where you abandoned your values, where you chose fear over truth. And if you listen to that teacher, If you learn from it, you grow. You evolve. You redeem. Redemption is not about erasing the past, it's about transforming it. It's about turning pain into wisdom, mistakes into lessons, shadows into light. And that transformation begins with responsibility. Responsibility also means boundaries. It means saying no to what drains you, saying yes to what nourishes you. It means protecting your energy, your time, your soul. Not out of selfishness, but out of self-respect. Because when you respect yourself, you stop tolerating what dishonors you. You stop chasing what hurts you. You stop settling for what shrinks you. And that shift, from tolerance to truth, is the beginning of power. Not power over others. Power over yourself. The power to choose. To act. To create. To lead. And that power is sacred. It's the foundation of a meaningful life. Peterson's philosophy is not for the faint of heart. It demands honesty, courage, discipline. But it also offers something rare, transformation. Not superficial change. Deep, lasting, soul-level transformation. And that transformation begins with one decision, to take responsibility. For your healing. For your growth. For your life. That decision is not glamorous. It's not easy. But it's liberating. Because once you take responsibility, you stop waiting. You stop blaming. You stop drifting. You start living. Living with purpose. Living with clarity. Living with strength. So today, ask yourself, what burden am I avoiding? What truth am I denying? What responsibility am I ready to claim? And then claim it. Not perfectly. Not dramatically. Just honestly. Because honesty is the first step. And once you take that step, the path begins to reveal itself. The path of redemption. The path of meaning. The path of becoming who you were always meant to be. Chaos. It's the word we fear most when life begins to unravel. When the job disappears. When the relationship ends. When the silence becomes unbearable. Chaos feels like punishment, like the universe has turned against us. But Jordan Peterson offers a radical reframe. Chaos isn't the enemy. It's the test. The crucible. The proving ground of transformation. In his lectures, he often speaks of the mythological battle between order and chaos, the known and the unknown. Order is structure, routine, predictability. Chaos is uncertainty, change, the abyss. And life is lived on the edge between the two. Too much order and you stagnate. Too much chaos and you drown. But if you learn to walk that edge, to face chaos without collapsing, you grow. You evolve. You become. Chaos is not a mistake. It's a signal. A message from the unconscious. A call to adventure. In mythology, the hero never begins in comfort. He begins in crisis. In loss. In confusion. And that crisis forces him to leave the familiar, to enter the unknown. That unknown is chaos. And within it lies the dragon. The dragon of fear, of shame, of trauma, of truth. And the only way to defeat the dragon is to face it. Not with arrogance. Not with denial. But with courage. Courage doesn't mean you're unafraid. It means you act despite the fear. You walk into the storm. You confront the shadow. You descend into the underworld of your own psyche, and you return with wisdom. Peterson's message is clear. The path to meaning runs through chaos. Not around it. Not above it. Through it. Because chaos reveals what order hides. It exposes the cracks in your foundation. The lies you've told yourself. The masks you've worn. And that exposure is painful. It shatters illusions. It forces reckoning. But it also creates space. Space for truth. Space for growth. Space for rebirth. Chaos is the death of the old self, and the birth of the new. But only if you choose to engage. Most people don't. They numb. They distract. They run. They build walls. But walls don't protect. They isolate. And isolation breeds suffering. So if you want to heal, you must stop hiding. You must enter the chaos. That chaos might look like grief, like heartbreak, like failure, like betrayal. But beneath the surface, it's transformation. It's the shedding of what no longer serves. The burning away of illusions. The purification of the soul. And that process is sacred. It's not comfortable. It's not linear. But it's necessary. Because without chaos, there is no change. And without change, there is no growth. Peterson often says, the things you most need to find will be found where you least want to look. That place, the one you avoid, is chaos. And within it lies your power. Power to see clearly. To feel deeply. To act wisely. Chaos teaches you who you are. Not who you pretend to be. Not who others expect you to be. Who you truly are. And that truth is liberating. It's the foundation of authenticity. And authenticity is the foundation of healing. When you stop performing, you start transforming. When you stop controlling, you start creating. When you stop fearing chaos, you start mastering it. Mastery doesn't mean domination. It means integration. It means learning to dance with uncertainty. To navigate complexity. To hold paradox. Chaos is not a problem to solve. It's a mystery to engage. And engagement requires presence. Not panic. Not avoidance. Presence. The ability to sit with discomfort. To breathe through pain. To listen to the silence. And in that silence, something shifts. You begin to hear your soul. Not your ego. Not your conditioning. Your soul. And your soul knows the way. It knows that chaos is not the end, it's the beginning. The beginning of awakening. Of evolution. Of becoming. So today, ask yourself, what chaos am I avoiding? What truth am I denying? What dragon am I refusing to face? And then face it. Not all at once. Not perfectly. Just honestly. Because honesty is the sword. Courage is the shield. And presence is the armor. With those tools, you can walk into the storm. You can confront the unknown. You can transform the chaos into clarity. Into strength. Into meaning. Because chaos isn't the enemy. It's the test. And you were born to pass it. Truth is dangerous. It's not soft. It's not polite. It doesn't care about your comfort. It cuts. It exposes. It shatters illusions. And yet, Jordan Peterson insists, when you have something to say, silence is a lie. That sentence alone is enough to shake the foundations of your life. Because most people live in silence. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they're afraid to say it. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of being misunderstood. So they swallow their truth. They smile when they want to scream. They agree when they want to resist. They stay when they want to leave. And every time they do, they betray themselves. Self-betrayal is the quiet killer. It doesn't show up in dramatic breakdowns. It shows up in slow erosion. Erosion of confidence. Erosion of identity. Erosion of joy. You begin to feel disconnected from your own life. You look in the mirror and see someone you don't recognize. Someone who's mastered the art of pretending. But pretending is exhausting. It drains your soul. It numbs your spirit. It silences your voice. And silence, over time, becomes suffering. Peterson's philosophy demands honesty. Brutal, raw, unfiltered honesty. Not to hurt others, but to heal yourself. Because healing begins when you stop lying. Lying to others. Lying to yourself. Lying to the world. The lies sound innocent. I'm fine. It's not a big deal. I don't mind. But they're not innocent. They're corrosive. They keep you trapped in roles you've outgrown. in relationships that shrink you, in environments that suffocate you. And the only way out is truth. Truth is not just a statement, it's a lifestyle. It's a commitment to authenticity, to integrity, to alignment. It means saying what you mean, feeling what you feel, living what you believe. And that's terrifying, because truth has consequences. It might cost you relationships, opportunities, approval, but it will give you something far more valuable, yourself, your real self, the self that doesn't perform, doesn't conform, doesn't apologize for existing. That self is buried beneath layers of silence. And the only way to uncover it is to speak. Speak even if your voice shakes. Speak even if it breaks the peace. Speak even if it changes everything. Because the peace that's built on silence is not peace, it's paralysis. And paralysis is not safety, it's slow death. So speak. Not to attack. Not to control. But to reveal. To liberate. To connect. Because truth creates real connection. Not surface-level pleasantries. Not polite avoidance. Real connection. The kind that heals. The kind that transforms. Kind that lasts. But truth must be spoken with wisdom. With compassion. With timing. Peterson doesn't advocate reckless honesty, he advocates courageous honesty. Honesty that's rooted in self-awareness. In emotional intelligence. In moral clarity. That kind of honesty doesn't destroy, it rebuilds. It doesn't shame, it enlightens. It doesn't divide, it awakens. And awakening is the purpose of truth. Truth awakens you to your values, your boundaries, your desires. It shows you what matters, what hurts, what heals. And once you see that, you can no longer live in denial. Denial is comfortable, but it's not sustainable. It creates internal conflict. You say one thing, feel another, do a third. And that fragmentation leads to anxiety, depression, burnout. The cure is integration. And integration begins with truth. So today, ask yourself, what am I not saying? What truth am I avoiding? What silence is suffocating me? And then speak. Write it down. Say it aloud. Share it with someone you trust. Or simply whisper it to yourself. But speak. Because every time you speak your truth, you reclaim your power. You reconnect with your soul. You realign with your purpose. Peterson's message is clear. Tell the truth. Or at least don't lie. That's the foundation. That's the compass. That's the path. And it's a path worth walking. Even if it's hard. Even if it's lonely. Even if it breaks you. Because sometimes, breaking is the beginning of becoming. Identity is not a fixed point. It's a process. A becoming. A story that's rewritten every time you make a choice. Jordan Peterson often says, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. That's not just advice, it's a philosophy. A way of life. Because most people live trapped in outdated versions of themselves. They carry labels they didn't choose. Roles they've outgrown. Stories that no longer serve. And they mistake those stories for truth. But the truth is fluid. It evolves. And so must you. You are not who you were. You are who you choose to become. That choice is your power. Your freedom. Your responsibility. But it's also terrifying. Because becoming means letting go. Letting go of the familiar. The predictable. The comfortable. It means stepping into the unknown. Into chaos. Into possibility. And possibility is messy. It doesn't come with guarantees. It comes with risk. With failure. With transformation. But transformation is the purpose of life. Not perfection. Not stability. Transformation. Peterson's work is rooted in the idea that meaning comes from growth. And growth comes from challenge. From discomfort. From effort. You don't grow by staying safe. You grow by stretching, by stumbling, by rising. And every time you rise, you become someone new, someone wiser, stronger, deeper. But that becoming is a choice, a daily choice, a moment-to-moment choice. And most people don't choose. They repeat, they react, they relive. They stay loyal to versions of themselves that were built in pain, in fear, in survival. But survival is not living. It's enduring. And you were not born to endure. You were born to evolve. Evolution begins with awareness. With asking, who am I now? Not who is I. Not who do they think I am. Who am I now? And who do I want to be? That question is sacred. It opens the door to transformation. But transformation requires honesty. Brutal honesty. You must face your patterns, your habits, your wounds. You must see how you've been shaped and decide how you want to reshape yourself. That's the work. The inner work. The soul work. And it's not glamorous. It's not Instagrammable. It's quiet. It's painful. It's real. Real transformation doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in 1,000 micro decisions. In the way you speak to yourself. In the way you show up. In the way you respond to triggers. In the way you choose courage over comfort. And every time you choose growth, you rewrite your story. You shift your identity. You become. But becoming is not about abandoning your past. It's about integrating it, honoring it, learning from it. Your past is not a prison, it's a teacher. It shows you what hurt, what healed, what shaped you. And once you understand it, you can transcend it. Not by forgetting, but by transforming. By choosing to carry the lessons, not the wounds. The wisdom, not the shame. The strength, not the fear. Peterson often speaks about the archetype of the hero. The one who leaves the known, faces the unknown, and returns transformed. That hero is you. Not someday. Not when you're ready. Because readiness is a myth. You'll never feel fully prepared. You'll never feel fully confident. But you can feel committed. Committed to growth. To truth. To becoming. So today, ask yourself, who am I becoming? What choices am I making? What stories am I living? And do those stories reflect my truth or my trauma? If it's trauma, rewrite them. If it's fear, challenge them. If it's shame, release them. Because you are not your past. You are your potential. And potential is infinite. It expands every time you choose alignment. Every time you choose integrity. Every time you choose yourself. Choosing yourself doesn't mean isolation. It means authenticity. It means showing up as you are. Not as who they want you to be. Not as who you used to be. As you are. And that version, the real version, is enough. More than enough. It's powerful. It's radiant. It's free. Freedom is not the absence of responsibility. It's the presence of choice. And choice is your superpower. Use it. Use it to heal. To grow. To evolve. To become. Because you are not who you were. You are who you choose to become. And that choice begins now. Every story worth telling begins with a call. A whisper in the dark. A discomfort that won't go away. A question that refuses to be ignored. Jordan Peterson calls this the beginning of the hero's journey. The moment you realize that the life you've been living is too small for the soul you carry. That your pain has a purpose. That your suffering is not punishment, it's preparation. Preparation for the path ahead. A path that only you can walk. Not because you're chosen. Not because you're special. But because you're ready. Ready to stop surviving. Ready to start becoming. Ready to answer the call. The hero's journey is not a fantasy. It's not reserved for legends or warriors or saints. It's for you. For the one who's been broken. Betrayed. Silenced. For the one who's carried the weight of generations. Who's lived in the shadows of others. Who's questioned their worth? The journey begins when you say, enough. Enough pretending. Enough performing. Enough hiding. It begins when you choose truth over comfort, growth over safety, meaning over numbness. That choice is the threshold, the doorway, the initiation. But crossing that threshold is terrifying, because it means leaving the familiar, the predictable, the known. It means entering chaos, facing dragons, confronting shadows. And those dragons are not just external, they're internal. They're the voices that say you're not enough, the memories that haunt you, the patterns that bind you. And facing them requires courage. Not the absence of fear, the presence of commitment. The commitment to rise, to heal, to evolve. Peterson's framework is clear. The hero is not the one who avoids suffering, it's the one who transforms it. Who walks into the fire and comes out forged. Who turns wounds into wisdom, pain into power, chaos into clarity. That transformation is not linear. It's messy. It's painful. It's sacred. And it begins with one decision: to take responsibility for your healing, for your growth, for your life. Responsibility is the sword. Truth is the compass. Courage is the shield. And with those tools, you begin the journey. You leave behind the false self, the one built on fear, shame, silence. You step into the real self, the one built on integrity, authenticity, strength. And that self is not perfect. It's not polished. It's not finished. But it's real. And real is enough. The journey will test you. It will break you. It will humble you. But it will also awaken you to your values, your voice, your vision. You'll begin to see clearly, to feel deeply, to act wisely. You'll stop reacting and start responding. You'll stop chasing and start creating. You'll stop hiding and start leading. Leading yourself. Leading others. Leading with truth. Because the hero's journey is not just personal, it's collective. Your healing heals others. Your courage inspires others. Your truth liberates others. You become a lighthouse, a guide, a mirror. Not by preaching, but by living. Living with integrity, with purpose, with presence. Presence is the final gift. The ability to be here, fully, honestly, powerfully, to show up for your own life. Not as a victim, not as a performer, as a creator, a transformer, a hero. And that hero is not a fantasy, it's a choice. A daily choice. A moment-to-moment choice. And every time you choose truth, responsibility, courage, you walk the path. You write the story. You become. So today, begin. Not someday. Not when it's easier. Not when you're ready. Today. Because the journey doesn't wait. The call doesn't fade. The dragons don't disappear. But you can rise. You can answer. You can walk. And in walking you become. Not who they told you to be. Not who you used to be. Who you truly are. The hero. The healer. The awakened. The journey begins with you. And it begins now.